permission is sought for the erection of a new entrance pavilion. So this is the proposal here, so Hamlet Road, the front of the church, and then for the entrance pavilion to be built in that location. The new entrance will enable the internal configuration of the church whilst retaining access to the upper gallery, and these changes internally to the church have already received listed building consent by an ecclesiastical exemption certificate. And I don't know, it's probably not overly clear on the slide, but I will just explain it slightly in that, so this was the entrance where some of the members went through who did take the opportunity to look inside the church. So you currently come in here to access the building, and what will happen is that's going to be blocked up to provide a new kitchen area, and then a new entrance will be provided here with the staircase up, which takes you up to the gallery, because currently there's a staircase in this location here, and this is part of the, as I say, the internal changes to the church to help make it more usable and make it easier to heat and various things like that. So that's the purpose of the new entrance. So this is the elevations, and again just a bit closer to, and then you can see there this is the section through, and that shows you where they'll go through at first floor level. And then the view from Hamlet Road. And this is obviously the site as it is at the moment where that entrance will be built. Just various views along Hamlet Road. So I haven't any further updates, and the recommendation is one of approval as per your papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Right. I have three public speakers, but I suspect two representatives from Haverhill Town Council. Councillor Brown as the ward member, and again Cliff Patton as the agent. Councillor Brown, are you ready?
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, sorry to be here again. It seems like the plans have got it in for the historic buildings of Haverhill lately. Could I begin by reading out one of the residents' objections to these plans, which I think sums up the situation? It reads, "The old independent church is a much loved and iconic Haverhill building standing proudly in Hamlet Road Conservation Area. The church is listed as Grade 2 style. The proposed new pavilion or porch will look completely out of place on the church, as the church already has two porches facing the road. Surely it would be best for the church to make the existing porch more inviting than bolt a modern porch on the side of the church. The church also has a very pleasant lawn garden which helps to act as a break between the church and the houses that line Hamlet Road. The loss of open space next to the church will severely damage the setting of this Haverhill landmark building. There is also hardly a ringing endorsement to the plans from English Heritage, who say the proposed new vestibule would be a major addition to the building and a prominent one. The new building itself might be acceptable in form and scale, but its addition necessitates the demolition of historic fabric and permanent compromising of parts of the western elevation of the church. The elevation is a considered and high quality architectural composition. The proposed new stair from the vestibule to the gallery would remove the top of the present arch, including the blind panel above and part of the masonry above that. This is a permanent change to historic architecture which could result in harm to its significance in terms of the National Planning Policy Framework paragraphs 132 and 134. Ends. Surely the church authorities could have come up with a better scheme to attract new visitors than erecting this large structure on the side of a Grade 2 style listed building. We have not got many listed buildings in Haverhill. What we have got, we are determined to save for the future generations of our town. Just because there is a nice piece of grass space adjacent to the church, it does not mean it has to be built on. Sometimes less says more. Would it not have been better to get the architect to look at installing some welcoming glass doors in one of the existing porches that are on the front of the building? Please leave the church in its original splendour as the architect and our predecessors would have wished. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Just again to try and emphasise the church.
Could you turn your microphone on, please?
Apologies. Just again to try and emphasise the needs of the church really and the thinking behind the scheme. The listed building consent has has approved alterations internally, which you've seen on the drawings, to enable the activities in the hall to move into the church. And the attempt has been to maximise that clear space without having an impact on the pews in the main volume of the church, and you would have seen inside that and how the pews work. So one of the benefits of not using the existing and only level access door is that that lobby forms quite a useful space for the porch. But probably more importantly is the understanding that English Heritage had and the discussions we had in terms of the overall concept of the scheme. Whilst they would always regret the removal of any part of the historic fabric, on balance they have accepted that the overall package is a good way of trying to maintain the viability of this enormous building, which is still quite a critical issue. I think probably the thinking behind the entrance area can probably be covered by saying that existing buildings need to reflect the needs and nature of their occupants, and to ensure a continuing useful life, listed buildings need to adapt in a sympathetic and organic way as well, and this is recognised by English Heritage. And in this case, they have stated that whilst the loss of the historic fabric is to be regretted, the scheme is supported as a way of maintaining the viability of the building. The church has inherited a building built by people who had a very different way of being church. The church family and the way it relates to the community has moved on, but obviously being a listed building, the building is a bit limited into the way it can be moved on. Churches no longer desire to meet behind closed doors in buildings that look a little bit like a fortress. Open doors and welcoming buildings, signified by glazed entrances and opening doors, are a desire to meet and serve the community and reflect the nature of the church family. And thus the glazed entrance pavilion signifies welcome as opposed to keep out, which the building message is at the moment. And just to add, in a lot of other cases we have found that it is totally unacceptable to change existing doors to glass doors, which means that the building would remain a bit of a fortress and a very difficult building to approach. And the church have had problems for years in terms of people finding it difficult, if they're not familiar with the building, to approach it. And the entrance area is an attempt at a welcoming and signifying bridge-type building into the community.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, you don't necessarily safeguard a historic building by protecting it, from change. You protect a listed building by ensuring there are sufficient funds to maintain it and look after it. And part of that is ensuring it's a usable building that welcomes people in, and people today want facilities in their buildings. They don't want to cross their legs for 3 hours. They want to have a loo available. They want to have kitchen facilities available. And it's particularly the kitchen facilities that are going to go into the existing porch that are going to be facilitated by this new entrance porch. So what this development will do, I believe, is make this building more welcoming to the community. It'll enable more community use, and by getting better use, it'll generate more money that will enable the building to be preserved for future generations. It is a beautiful building. I took the opportunity to go inside the church, and I know it's difficult for some of us to accept that an extension to a listed building can be in a modernish style. but it's accepted, particularly by English Heritage these days, that actually an extension can be modern in style to a listed building to draw the distinction between what was there before and what is new. So I don't have any difficulty with this, and I am happy to move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could Gemma put up a photograph of the front of the building? It's not showing it in its splendour, then perhaps that will help do. Right. I don't agree with Deborah. I don't agree with the agent, the applicant. Sorry. I do agree with the residents, the letter that Tony Brown read out. This is a magnificent building with a magnificent facade. I think with a bit of imagination, they don't need to put a car bunker on the side of it. I know that's a used word for all sorts of offences, but I just think it's spoiling it. It's a really lovely shaped building. It was designed in that shape. It wasn't designed with a porch on it because that would have looked out of shape. So I'm not in favour of that. They're going to have to find a way, I think, of dealing with the internal arrangements, the pews and whatever, within that. And I think imagination they could do it. So I would definitely be voting against approval of this. On that, just one, it's just an offence to actually touch that building on the outside. So I'm going to vote against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nichols. Councillor Middle.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see both sides of this. I mean, you have to reuse these buildings. An empty building is just no use to anything. And we have to find some sort of use for these buildings that are just quite impractical to upkeep, to find a community use for. I think I would regret the loss of the garden, that bit of garden. I can see that it adds a lot to Hamlet Road rather. But at the end of the day, the important thing is to maintain this building and maintain its community use. So if this is the only way forward, and it would strike me as quite a pragmatic proposal for the continued community use of this wonderful building, then maybe that's what we have to agree to. The only thing I would say is the sort of vestibule or the new entrance. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily have to be a permanent structure. It may be in 25 years' time there's a different use for the building and that little addition could come down because it is what it is, an addition, and wouldn't necessarily be a permanent feature forever and a day. So I have to concur with the Conservation Officer, English Heritage and the Church that if this is the only way forward that they can see to continue the community use for this building, then they would have my approval as well. But I can understand the residents and everybody who regrets the loss of that little bit of garden and the bit of green that it gives in that area. But I will give my approval to it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Pugh.
Thank you very much. I too am really split on this. Listed buildings really do so often need to adapt, or as in so many cases, we will lose them in their entirety. And dereliction or demolition will be much worse outcome in this particular attractive and sensitive location. It's because of the sensitivity of the location that I welcome the sensitivity of the design response, and I know that it has been accepted by so many conservation organisations. I wouldn't object to a further comment from our conservation officer in this regard. Certainly, if she had further reservations, that would increase my reservations. But like Councillor Ray, I am very in favour of a modern response to a historic environment. That is extremely difficult for lots of people to accept a lot of the time. But I think it is right that we reflect the time of the construction of these buildings and give our response. It's also true that that is not necessarily a permanent response. And the way in which this is designed and constructed may reflect the sensitivities of the community to the history that is being preserved here. So I will be voting in favour at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's stretching incredulity to suggest that if this porch is put on, the whole building will have to be demolished. That's just nonsense. Please just leave the building. When we have the refusal, could it be recorded? Because I don't want people to look back in 50 years and say, who ruined that building? This committee. I don't want my name associated with it.
Thank you, Councillor Middleton. Any comments?
Thank you. We have, well, firstly I should say that the internal works to the church itself are dealt with through the United Reformed Church's own internal system, and we have no control over those works internally. But it's a knock-on implication of those internal works that has led to the proposal for the extension on the side. So we have sort of considered it as part of the whole package because that explains the reasoning why the proposal has come forward. We have looked in great length at the building with the agents and English Heritage, and it really is, I think, the only option. The interior of the building, because of levels and pews and other historic fabric inside, believe me, we really could not find an alternative solution. And obviously it's linked with losing facilities in the hall as well, so there are bigger implications. In terms of the design and the scale of it, the building, as you know if you've been on the site with it, the building is incredibly imposing. It's a huge structure in the middle of Hamlet Road. It's beautifully detailed, it's lovely brickwork, and I do believe that the extension as it's proposed, when you see the elevations, it's clearly subservient, it steps down in scale, it's set back from the main, the main facade for quite a depth. So I don't think there's any way you're going to lose the impact of that church from the street. The open space will exist behind the building, so you can still go into that open space and appreciate the building, although again it will be a narrower feature in the house, in the main street itself. And I think the simple design is better because we're not very good at replicating Victorian or any historic architecture in terms of the same quality of the detailing and the brickwork. And I think again it's right that it's distinguishable as of its time rather than it looking in the future like perhaps it was originally part of the building. So I think to have its own identity but be clearly subservient to the main body of the church is the right approach. And I don't have any reservations about it.
Thank you. Right, any more? In that case, it is proposed and seconded for approval with the recommendations on page 135. All those in favour, please show. And those against?
10 for and 1 against. That's carried.
Shameful.
Agreed.
Shameful.